crisis, poverty, dissatisfaction. These are the most appropriate words to describe Germany after World War I. A stone horn for those who dare to start a war? It seemed as if the German lion would forever remain in the shadows and never roar again. However, where one falls, one rises twice as strong. Only 20 years later, once again the old continent had to bow before them. And one man single-handedly achieved that miracle. None other than the artist with the unique talent of redrawing the world map. Adolf Hitler, who built his throne with violence, deceit, and betrayal. Rewinding back to 1918, Hitler had now become a drifter on the streets of Munich. The only asset he possessed was a heart filled with hatred towards those he believed were responsible for the surrender, as well as many other fervent nationalists in Germany. He could not believe that the mighty German army could be defeated by the Allies. This could only be the result of a stab in the back by pacifists, Jews, and communists. And he vowed to make these people pay. But now, homeless, without a job, with only a cross of honor on his chest, he chose to continue serving in the military to make a living. By July 1999, he was ordered to monitor a small political group called the German Workers' Party. According to scholar William Serra, author of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, although this organization bore a name that seemed to support communism, in reality, it was merely a front for a gathering of individuals heavily laden with anti-Semitic sentiments and extreme nationalism, which had long existed within the very person of the young fascist. Recognizing that this political group was very much in line with his own views, Hitler applied to join and became the 555th member, officially beginning his path to power. Thanks to his oratory skills, he made himself the focal point of the meetings, leaving a strong impression on the founder and party chairman at the time, Anton Reckler. By 1920, Hitler was appointed to be responsible for propaganda and recruiting new members. At the same time, he also left his job in the military to fully dedicate himself to his political ambition. In the summer of the same year, the German Workers' Party was renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, widely known as the Nazi Party. It was Hitler himself, with his flair for symbolism, who personally added a swastika in the center of a circle on a red background on the party's flag. From here, the most haunting and terrifying symbol in human history was born. Around this same time, Hitler met Erzberg, a soldier with a voice in the party and someone who hated the Treaty of Versailles to the core. With the support of Rome, Hitler quickly climbed the ladder of power within the organization. By 1921, he became the party chairman. During this time, a wave of soldiers were dismissed as a consequence of the Treaty of Versailles. They were forced to live on the streets without food or stable jobs. And many of them chose to move to Munich, where there is a tradition of racial and class discrimination. Coming from a military background, Hitler quickly realized that only these former comrades could be an opportunity to increase his influence. With his natural gift for public speaking, he organized a series of anti-Semitic and anti-website speeches, attracting a large number of former soldiers to join the party. These men were later assembled into a force to maintain order at party conventions, and soon became known as the Sturmhaft-Heilung, also known as the Storm Division or SA. With this new force, Hitler himself repeatedly led the troops, interfering in the speeches of other parties. He was even sentenced to 3 months in prison due to his assault and violent personality. However, in reality, the Nazi Party only had a voice in Munich and Bavaria, while other parts of Germany did not know they existed. And Hitler was determined to change that. With his autocratic personality, the fascist general forced other party leaders to follow his crazy ambition to save the country. Unexpectedly, they were terrified of that plan. Other Central Committee members, including former chairman Anton Reckler, believed that Hitler's sky-high ambitions would eventually drag them all down into the Nazi abyss. And indeed, their fears almost became a reality. To protect himself, in the summer of 1921, a plot to overthrow Hitler's power was carried out. Taking advantage of Hitler's trip to Berlin to expand the Nazi movement throughout Germany, these Central Committee members deliberately removed the position of party chairman and replaced him and everyone else. However, this love affair immediately fell apart when Hitler threatened to expel himself from the party. The leaders immediately realized that Hitler was no longer only the best propagandist, but also the one who brought in the majority of the party's budget, losing this dictator. This meant the end of the young Nazi party. Understanding his position and importance, Hitler took advantage of the situation to advance further. When he demanded dictatorial powers and to be the sole leader, while also abolishing the party's Central Committee, which had long been a thorn in his side. Although they didn't want to, the other Central Committee members had no choice but to accept those unfair terms for Hitler to return. His power was once again reinforced. After successfully eliminating the last opposition from the party, the fascist gaze once again turned towards Berlin. The Weimar Republic government is gradually stabilizing society. The people's dissatisfaction has now decreased compared to before. This scared Hitler. He feared that if the Berlin government could actually stabilize society, it would be the end of the expansion of Nazism, as well as his ambition to revive Germany. Therefore, on September 8, 1923, Hitler carried out a coup d'etat to overthrow the Republic. Started with the kidnapping of Bavarian leaders at the Bugaparkeller beer hall. Hitler then marched with General Erich Ludendorff, a respected general for his contributions in World War I, hoping to use his reputation to overthrow local armies and create a new state of his own. However, contrary to what the great genius Hitler had planned, the local soldiers didn't care who he was, and immediately gunfire erupted. The SA forces were shattered, and their supreme leader was the first to flee. Young Ludendorff and the coup participants were quickly arrested. The leaders of Hitler's National Party were arrested and prosecuted for treason. It seemed that the luck of this failed artist had run out, but with his natural gift for oratory and a fervent national spirit, the young man turned the trial into a platform for attacking the German leadership. This event elevated Hitler's notoriety, reaching a new height, surpassing even the borders of Germany. That passion and spirit even moved the heart of the judge and everyone in the courtroom. In the end, he was sentenced to only 5 years in prison. However, in reality, if you count the time in pre-trial detention, the dictator only had to spend less than a year in prison. During his time in prison, Hitler met Rudolf Hess, who would later become known as the founding father of Nazi Germany. Together, they wrote a book that later became the ideological foundation of the entire temporary empire. My Count, My Life of Struggle. Through this book, Hitler poisoned the minds of millions of German youth with anti-Semitic rhetoric and notions of racial superiority. According to him, Jews and people such as Slavs and Czechs are all of the lower class. The German people have the right to rule over them with an iron fist. One thing that the Weimar Republic firmly opposed. However, with Hitler, the greatest enemies were not the Republic but the Marxists, the Communists, or in other words, the Soviets and the Jews. Hitler's 5 months in prison passed quickly. So when he stepped out of the prison door, he was now a completely new person. Learning from the failure of the restaurant coup, the fascists realized that he couldn't seize power through a conventional armed coup. We must win politically, beat opponents. However, the Republicans have stabilized society. Hitler banned from public speaking, activities halted, situations tough. But if he was someone ready to give up easily, Hitler would not have been a brutal dictator. And activities of Nazi party stalled due to internal disagreements. But if he was someone ready to give up at the first sign of trouble, fearing obstacles, he would not have been able to inscribe his name and reputation among the few dictators who were the most brutal in history. Party expanded. Nazis won 12 seats starting Third Reich. Hitler's opportunity arose. The economic crisis of 1929-1933 unfolded. In the general election of 1958, the Nazi party secured 12 seats out of 491 in the parliament. This became the first cornerstone for the Third Reich. By 1959, the era of Hitler, which had been dormant for many years, finally arrived. The economic crisis of 1929-1933 unfolded. German people settling their lives faced poverty and degradation. The fascist leader exploited for gain. By working with like-minded newspapers, the fascist leader reached Germans, appealing to the dissatisfaction and national pride of the descendants of the Holy Roman Empire. The fascist leader painted a vision for these miserable people of a bright future, where the Nazi movement would resurrect Germany into a mighty 1,000-year empire, where the shameful Treaty of Versailles would be torn apart, and once again make the old continent look up to them. Thus, the Nazi movement would revive Germany, leading the youth of the South to rise the continent. Raise continent. With the people's support, the National Party. This result exceeded Hitler's wildest dreams as he aimed for 50 seats. After the election, Hitler gained industrialist support. They would be key allies for his mad goals. This result even surpassed Hitler's wildest dreams. He only hoped to secure about 50 seats, and this result even surpassed Hitler's wildest dreams. After the significant increase in the general election, Hitler quickly sought the support of the German industrialists. In his view, they would be the right-hand allies serving his insane purposes. And for Hitler, politically naive leaders funded him. Unaware they were on the tyrant's purge list, those who thought they controlled Hitler were mere pawns in his fascist power game. 1932, he ran for press. They were listed by One Paulo Dube. Jesham married Bagatat Zapadan Mint and Megan. Those who thought they were controlling Hitler, in reality, they were just pawns on the chessboard of this genius and deranged fascist's power. In January 1932, he ran for president. Although he failed, Hitler made an extremely important breakthrough, attracting many conservatives to his side, including the son of the incumbent president, Oskar von Hindenburg, by winning over many conservatives to his side, including the son of the incumbent president, Oskar von Hindenburg. By the general election in July of the same year, the National Party had secured 230 seats in parliament, making it the largest party in all of Germany. On January 30th, 1933, from a wandering painter sketching on the streets of Vietnam, from a former soldier who had only set foot in Germany 10 years prior, Adolf Hitler had now stepped onto the political stage as the Chancellor of Germany. Historians refer to this as the milestone marking the birth of the Third Reich. Even the Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, recorded in his diary as follows: "Almost like a dream, a fairy tale. A new Germany is born. 14 years of effort have brought success. The German Revolution has begun." Or as the German Army commander, Field Marshal Walter von Falkes, once wrote in his memoirs, "Hitler is the destiny of Germany, and that destiny is irresistible." However, there are still final obstacles blocking the path to absolute power. Other political parties and the elderly President Hindenburg, those who must perish for Germany to prosper. On February 27, 1933, the German Reichstag suddenly caught fire. Seizing this opportunity, Hitler blamed the Communist Party for the incident and requested President Hindenburg to sign the Reichstag fire decree, granting him new powers, including the abolition of basic civil rights, such as freedom of assembly and freedom of the press, the security of correspondence, and particularly allowing the arrest of individuals without trial. Through this decree, Hitler officially outlawed the Communist Party and any political opponents. Now, only the Nazi Party and its allies were the sole political parties in Germany. A month before the fire, Hitler successfully persuaded the parliament to pass the Enabling Act. With this law, Hitler was granted the power to enact laws without parliamentary approval for 4 years. This agreement involved the parliament consenting to transfer legislative power to the government and stripping the president of authority. In other words, they effectively buried parliamentary democracy themselves. Within half a month, Hitler appointed Nazi governors in each state, tasked with dismantling the state government structures, completing actions that Bismarck, Wilhelm II, and the Republic never dared to undertake. Abolishing the powers of each state and placing them under the control of the central government. However, at this point, another issue arose for the newly empowered dictator. The SA Storm Division, IPN, the force that brought him to the pinnacle of power, had now grown too powerful with a number of about 3 million people. Particularly, their commander, Ernst Röhm, was someone who believed in the National Socialist Revolution, inherent in the very name. In addition, Hitler also intensified his search for allies. And immediately, he noticed there were 2 highly potential candidates, Italy, a member of the winning side in World War I, but the rewards they received were quite minimal. And Japan, an Asian power, always wanted its name to shine across the world. Together, they joined a pivotal point in the fight against international communism in 1937, a perfect cover for those plotting to seize the entire territory. In early March 1938, Hitler did something that no one in German history had ever accomplished. He turned the shirt into part of himself without shedding a drop of blood. This fact pushed Hitler's prestige among the German people to new heights. At this point, they truly believed that Hitler was a savior, a figure sent by God to rebuild Germany. Not stopping there, in September of the same year, Hitler was with British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and French Prime Minister Edward Daladier. And Italian leader Mussolini attended a conference in Munich. Here, these leaders decided to hand over the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia to Germany without considering the opinions of the president of that country. In fact, after this summit conference, Chamberlain called it peace for our time, and the American magazine Time even named Hitler as their Person of the Year. It can be said that the Munich Conference of 1938 was the pinnacle of cowardice in the appeasement policies of Britain and France. This truly turned Hitler into a saint in the eyes of the German people. In the early months of 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, agreeing to divide Poland without the knowledge of Britain and France. In the end, to finally stop the wave of communism from invading the stronghold of this ideology, they decided to cooperate. It was a slap in the face for Chamberlain's cowardly appeasement policy. Then, on the morning of September 1st, 1939, Führer Adolf Hitler officially launched the attack on Poland, marking the beginning of World War II. The darkest period in human history has arrived. From a petty officer to the head of an empire, he had to sell the soul of his people and himself in a desperate attempt to do so. However, looking at his path, none of us can deny that he was a great genius, a man who restored Germany to the status of a sacred empire from a pile of ashes. However, in the process of doing so, he burned the whole world, and nearly 100 years after his suicide in his bunker, the name Adolf Hitler still resonates as a demon that once walked the earth.